So welcome to part 8, the final part of this series, where we um, will export out our maps here for Unity 5, the new PBR Shane on Unity 5. There's the standard specular, and then there's just the standard. So we'll be using the standard. You'll see in a minute in these the export settings, the maps it's going to use: albedo, metallic, normal, and it's going to blend based on alpha transparency between the maps to give us to rebuild this result over in Unity. Now it's not going to look identical, but it'll look close enough. It's obviously going to depend on the image-based lighting you're using in Unity. So we'll be just using the default sort of the default skybox, and it looks pretty good with the real-time global illumination. Um, so that said, we'll export the maps. But first, there's something I noticed here. If you come around the back of the model here, and you can see this seam, and I did a bit of I tried to paint over, and it wouldn't paint. It kept it just went across the seam, but it didn't cover up the seam. So I thought it might have been a problem with the bake. So I just the normal map bake. This would be a kind of a typical problem you might get, but it wasn't. Turned out it wasn't that. There was nothing wrong with the normal map bake. It's a bug that's actually in. I did a bit of research. First, I went through these layers to try and troubleshoot it, and realised that if I turned all these off, that it was this layer causing the problem, the metal down here. So no matter what I did, when I turned this metal off, you can see the seam is gone. So I knew then it was from this layer. So then I tried to paint over that, and it wasn't working. So then I went online there and just did a bit of research, and I discovered that yeah, it's a tangent mismatch. So it's a normal mismatch. We go over to the 2D view, and that seam there is this here. That's the seam there from the back of this. So that's where it's coming from. So if you're getting that yourself, it isn't a problem with the baker, and it's something that's wrong within Unity, because it's shown up over something that's wrong with Substance Painter, because it's shown up in Unity as well. So I just thought I'd make that note, so that people didn't start panicking if they noticed the same thing occurring. Right, so I'm going to export. So just up the file, export all channels, and you can see here, if you go into configuration tab, these are all the presets. This has changed now. Another thing you have to remember is Painter is only a relatively new sort of software. It was on a beta stage for a long time, and so this is it's only really at its in its infancy. So it's an excellent software for such a new software. So it can only keep getting better and more feature rich. So bring it on, algorithmic. So here's what we're going to be using here: Unity 5, the standard metallic workflow. And this was the other one I was talking about, the standard specular. If you're using Unity 4, tough shite, because I'm not. But you can just download Unity 5 now. You can download it just for free as a personal kind of edition, or if you're not making shitloads of cash. I think it's under 10 grand or whatever. As an indie developer, even, you can get the fully featured pro version. I don't think you can publish your games to certain standards or whatever, but I'm not sure 100%. You'd have to look it up. But meanwhile, you can just download the free version. It's exactly the same as the one I just downloaded today, a couple of hours ago, and messed around with it and got it up and running, and got the everything looking okay, and got the global illumination light and everything working. So straightforward enough. So as I say here, we're going to use the standard metallic, and you can see here these are the maps, and I'm not too sure about this. Looking at sort of tutorials online, the older map export thing, I think, I don't know, maybe you can build your own ones here, your own presets. So I had a preset built here for trying to testing out a high poly workflow without any normal maps to render over in V-Ray. So that's just one I set up. So you can clear all these, and you can add them in here, the different channels and everything.
Sorry, just on Skype there for the last hour, so I'm going to lose my train of thought a little bit. So yeah, so that basically that was just a setup. As I said, a preset. You can add your own preset here. I just added this in, and this AO when I added in, you won't have either of these obviously in your list, but I'll show now. You can't directly export this ambient occlusion that was baked, so you just have to. I'll show you in a minute how to get the AO out. So yeah, so all you have to worry about is this one here, because we're going to be using the standard metallic shader over in Unity. So if you just click that preset, and basically these are just the RGB channels in the alpha channel, and these are our input maps, and then how they're being converted across. So you don't really have to worry about all that stuff that's going on. Just basically once you're going to use the preset, it'll all work when you go into Unity. So yeah, just make sure you have checked that first, and just beware that if you delete any of these and then close down your scene and reopen it, whatever you're doing here, it automatically saves out. So just make sure not to delete any of these unless you know what to add back in. Right, so back to export, and you want to just set your path. Obviously I just have PNG 16 bits. You can choose whatever bitmap, 8 bits. It doesn't have to be 16 bit or targets. So I'm just using PNGs, but it doesn't really matter. I was just testing out here. You can use 8-bit targets or 8-bit bitmaps. So yeah, set your I have the maps exported, so I'm not going to do it again. But yeah, set your path, set your output resolution. This is what we created our textures in, so this is what I'm going to export. But you could down res them here or up res them. Another great feature of Painter. So you're not locked into whatever resolution. So if you were, you know, painting your maps in Photoshop in 2K and then you realise you needed 4K, or if you're painting them in 1K and you realise you needed 2K, you can't scale them up without losing resolution. So it's a handy little feature to have, and quite unique I think as well. So default material, this would just be from over here, the texture set list. If you had multiple objects with different materials imported in FBX, they'd all show up here in the list. And then if you the sub list there just tells you this oil tank game that's low, that's what I had it named, and then underscore default material underscore albedo transparency. So that's what all this is here. They're just tags for the naming conventions when it saves it out. The dollar sign being before whatever it's going to be. So obviously the name of the mesh, the name of the texture set based on whatever material you imported it with, and then the map itself. So when you've that set up, you can just export, and it's going to export them, and a little pop-up is going to say finished exporting, open folder. Okay, so you can open the folder and then have a look at the maps, or you can just whatever, click OK, get out of it. And if you have any problems or errors, sometimes you get an error log if you're missing channels over here. You can just check down here in the log, and that'll just tell you everything that's going on. So I'll cancel out of that. So that'll be those maps exported then, those 3 maps. And then for the AO, you don't have to export an AO, but I'm going to do that anyway. So at the moment, in as I say, in Painter, they're adding it in the future, but you can't. Sorry, just taking a sip of my tea. You can't export the AO map directly. So you could have baked it out in Max, baked it in X normal, or just used the render surface map in Max. But you still would need your projection cage. Or sorry, you would have to do it off the unwrapped model. Right, so the workaround for just or one of the workarounds just to bake out an AO map is to just add a fill layer over the top of everything, and then just grab your AO and drop it into the base color, and there's our AO map added in. And if you want, you can add the levels onto this, and play with the levels here and crunch it up, crush it, sorry I keep saying crush the blacks and whites, or crush the blacks, So I'm not going to add that, but you can do that if you want. To save you a step in Photoshop if you did want to do that. So with that done there now, we can just go back to export all channels, and then what I've done here is I've just clicked this, added a preset, renamed AO, and then this is the preset here. And what it was you can copy any of these, delete all the maps, or else just create a new one and then choose RGB or RGBA, and then just drag your base color. Drag your base color here, and you let go, you get this fly out. You can just choose RGB channels, and then that would have been base color. So you can just change that because I added it from base color, and we're on base color over here, so you can just change the name to AO and bake that out as well then. And I don't actually have that baked, so I might as well just do it now. So AO, and make sure to just switch this config over to AO as well, or whichever your preset is, and export. And here's that little the dialog here, export finished, and open folder. And there's the folder where I've saved it in the path that we specified. So it looks like there's nothing. There's the AO. It looks like there's nothing on this map, but there actually is. It's just because there's transparency. And this is the albedo map, so it's not like a normal kind of a diffuse map from a traditional texturing sort of workflow. Normal map, a metallic AO, and our base color. So that is it for exporting our maps. And now the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to build go back to Max and build a collision mesh, because none of the to say we're going to test it out in a kind of a first person shooter type environment, so you couldn't just use a cylinder or a box as the collider, because it wouldn't really work. Well, it would work, but it wouldn't work too well. So we're going to build use a mesh collider and just build a really low poly proxy kind of a collider mesh in Max from the existing geometry. So we'll do that next. So here we are back in Max, and this is just our low poly. So what we're going to do here is just I'm going to select some of these faces, and sorry, I'll start up here and just select that center vert, whatever way you want to do this, but there's different selection methods to make it kind of quicker. So if I select that vert and control click on face selection, and then I can just grow that selection, and just grow it out to here, then control click and then shift click to select that ring. Control click, we don't actually need that one. Control click, shift click, and into a front orthographic view, and then just select them. So that's just a quick way to, if you think about the process of what you're selecting, just so you don't have to select it. There was only a couple of clicks involved there. So with those selected, we're just going to detach. Detach as a clone, and we'll select that clone and just isolate that. And now we can just start cleaning some of this up. So I'll just target some of these. And then a lot of these edges, you just want to keep the main edges here that define the primary sort of form, and you can get rid of all the rest of these. So I'm just double clicking and then control double clicking. So we want to keep this one, so we can just keep going around selecting. And just add to your selection. And I could have cleaned this up a bit better, for the purpose of the demonstration. I didn't, but you can clean this up as much as you like. You can see here That's the count there. I think the total count of the actual low poly was about 3,000 triangles or thereabouts, which it could be further optimized, but it's not a huge amount of triangles. And also then, as I mentioned, I think earlier on the UV chapter, it's the game engine will be it'll be the vert count more than the triangle count that it's more concerned about, and the vert count will be increased from the breaking up of the UV islands. But we won't worry about that for now. Just keep going around, and I'm just gonna pause this. Well, I suppose this, actually I'll just grow these and select these ones, and then I can just sorry, I should have just selected these ones and those ones, and I'll just grow and grow and delete them all together, and can delete these as well. Just deselect them and grow. Deselect them, and I'm just going to cap the bottom and change the topology around a bit there. So I could have just selected each for the verts and then control clicked again to select faces, just to lessen the amount of clicks. So we'll grow that and grow it again. Then we can delete that and then delete this, and that's that cleaned up. And then we can just select these edges and bridge them. Sorry, I have a stray vert here, so I have a couple of stray verts. So there's tools there to get rid of isolated verts, but I'm just going to select them and delete them manually. So I'm just Alt backspace, or sorry, backspace. It's Alt backspace when you have when you want to get rid of edges and leave the verts. So I'll just backspace them, and that one is obviously staying. We have a few up here to tidy up, so I can just select these edges and Alt backspace, or sorry, Control backspace. Right, so that's pretty much that, and now we can get rid of some of these edge loops. Control backspace, and I'm just going to select let me see. Oh yeah, I'll just double click this loop here and deselect these and move, and then shift drag and just kind of line them up there, and then vert and target weld, and same here. Now we can just select the border here and this border, and we can bridge them. I don't think it's there. Sorry, it's in a different place for smooth. Oh yeah, sorry, it's just that it's in a different place for edge. So let me see if you got a stray vert. No. Right, so that is pretty much that, and now we can let me see. Yeah, I'm just going to grab these two edges here and bridge them. I'm just going to target weld again. There's a couple of stray verts there still lying around, and we can just yeah, you can just target weld this over here. Actually, I have to cap that first. Cap, because it, and then we just target weld. And you don't have to worry about this geometry at all because it's just a collision mesh. You could have, this could have been retopologized as well using the freeform tools, but it's you know, it's really quick to do it this way. So we cap that and select these verts here and connect. I'll just connect across these. Before I do that, actually, I'm going to just delete every other one of these. So I'm just double clicking. And that is that. I probably just get rid of that one as well. Sorry, I'll just deselect these and control backspace, and then we can just get rid of that after all. Yeah. And now we can just connect these up. Let's connect from here. And sorry, that last one didn't connect. And I could probably get rid of a little bit more of this. So maybe rid of them. And yeah, I can get rid of that as well. I'm just, we could have, the collision mesh could have just went up a bit of the way, but because the character might be able to, you know, he might be able to jump off a balcony or whatever over a railing and land on top of this, or jump from here onto a box or something and then up onto this, so you want the collider to be all around it. So that is pretty much it, and that's it. That's all we need to do. So we'll just export this as an FBX, exactly the same as the other meshes, and then we are ready to go into Unity. So yeah, just export that the same way I did earlier on, and that'll be that. Right, so when you install Unity and boot it up, this screen will come up first. So I've been messing around earlier on there, and these were just automatically kind of created. So I'm just going to come up to a new project and just save that and call it whatever you like, or it'll automatically do it for you based on these, what's written here. So 3D, and then we're going to be just testing this in a, we put a first person controller in, so you can add in these asset packages. You can also add them in once you're in the Unity environment, but we might as well just add it in here. So it's this one here, characters, and done, and then just create project, and now it's going to import those, import that asset package. So I was getting these weird, even though this is a brand new install of Unity, I only installed it whatever earlier on today, getting these weird errors. So it was basically just kind of brute forcing through them, and it'll load up, and it loads up okay then. So I don't know what that is. I'm not going to worry about it. So here we are, the blank default scene. This is exactly what you'll get when you first open it. So I'm not really going to go into it too much, just the basics of what we need to know to do what we're doing. So the navigation is exactly the same as Painter. Alt left mouse button to orbit, middle mouse button to pan, right mouse button to zoom in and out, and the wheel also to zoom in and out. So the default scene here in Unity 5 comes with this skybox environment. So if you click on the main camera, you can see here the skybox, and here's a camera preview, and this is the inspector. So this is kind of like all the main settings of your different objects and everything. And this lighting tab, you won't have that here. So I'm just going to drag that out and close it down. So you won't have you'll just have the inspector. So I'll just come to window. Let me see what's going on. Window, it's lighting. Window, I'm looking straight at it, but I can't see it. Lighting, and then that'll pop up. So just grab the little tab, and we can dock it here, and it'll just snap into place. So here again, you can see this is our environment lighting. We'll look at that in a little while. Our directional light. This is our light. These are both placed in the scene by default. So we can delete this camera because we're going to be using the camera that's attached to the first-person controller, and we just leave the light there as it is. So standard assets, this is the package we just imported. It has these things here. So if you come down here, characters, first person, and then it just has the audio, the prefabs and the scripts that make it up. So everything's in here that we need for the first person controller, and I think they've updated the first person controller. I used Unity very briefly a good while back, but not enough to really know it. So I was just reading a bit up on it earlier on there, the Unity 5, and apparently this is this new first person character is improved from the one they used to have. So we'll be using that. We can have a look at that. So we'll look at that in a while. So you know, I suppose setting up folders and everything would be a good habit to get into, because I intend to start creating more and more sort of assets and maybe levels and things like that, or walkthroughs, or just to kind of get into Unity. Is you know, it's become more interesting to me. Game engines in general over the last couple of years, I've never really played around with them that much, a little bit, but they're becoming so powerful now that they're definitely worth looking into. Not even for making games, just even for I don't know, creating I don't know, anything you want really. But it was just something I was kind of exploring, so this was a good excuse to kickstart me. Okay, so I'm just going to create a folder, and just for the purpose of this, we'll just call it oil tank. Oil tank, even though it's a chem tank. Chem tank. We'll just call it assets, and we'll just go into that folder. So what we're going to need is first thing, actually, we'll create game object, 3D object, cube, and back to the inspector, and we just zero it out on the world axis, 0, 0, 0, and make it static, and that'll come into play when we use our global illumination later on. You don't have to worry about anything else here. It just has these components on them by default, the mesh render, which allows it to be rendered in the engine, and then just has a box collider on it. So you know, if our character, it just automatically has a box collider on it for collision detection in the game world. So I'll just scale it up here, and scale it up in Z. And now we'll bring in some of our maybe just scale the Y down a bit. We bring in some of our assets here. Just want to make sure that lighting, pre-compute, AGI, yeah. Right, so I'll just drag this folder over. So the handiest way to get stuff into Unity here is we're in our new folder we created. It's just to drag them in rather than opening up all your files and everything. We don't need the ID map, so we can just drag these in here. And if you wanted to, like, you could create different. Well, if I was going to be, you know, creating a big project in this, I'd obviously create all subfolders for textures, materials, static meshes, animated meshes. So I'd go to the trouble of doing that. But for this purpose of this, we'll just have this this folder here. Will do. Let me see. Hang on a second. I'll just grab that folder back in, and game oil tank low. So we'll drag that in. Hang on a second, don't know what's going on there. that's just that weird thing that was going up earlier on. You can just brute force on through that and it'll come in. And that is here, tank collider, and we'll drag that in there. And you can see here they've come in on their side here, but when we drag them into the scene, they're actually grand, because we exported, remember, with the Y up for the axis. So if I drag this into the scene, you can see it's properly aligned. And I'm just going to zero that out. 0, 0, 0. And so Unity is each of these grid spaces is or grid squares. It's a meter squared in the world. So we exported out with, you know, we said we were going to have this 2.5 stories high or whatever it was. So you can see there in relation to the ground here, which is whatever 15 meters this way. So that'd be about right. But you know, that can be changed around. It could be smaller, but when we put the first person controller in, you kind of see that it's going to only look maybe about 3 meters high. So I can just click there in 2D, and what I'm going to do is just grab the floor and press W for move, and I'm just going to bring it down to that grid kind of world plane there, 0 on the world plane, and then we'll grab our asset and just move that down a touch and come back out. Remember, I didn't fully sort that out. I probably should have flattened that out a bit more for shadows and GI here when it's sitting on the ground. Just bring it down a touch more and click 2D again. And now what we want to do is right click and create a material. By default now this is Unity's new PBS, or physically based shader, the standard, and there is the specular one. So the one we want is the standard. Remember, it's if we go to the specular, it has specular, funnily enough, and the albedo. It's just a different way of exporting from Unity. There was 2 presets, so this is the standard with our metallic, and so this is our albedo map here. And see here the way it's a 2K map. By default this might be shown up for you as 1K. If you're wondering why the resolution is so crappy looking, you can change this to 2K on each of your textures, and then if you want you can just take it off compressed to 16 bits just to make it look better in the viewport. So that's our albedo. Back to this material. Sorry, yeah, if you make a change here and you don't hit apply in Unity, it'll pop this warning up, which is actually a reminder, sorry, which is actually pretty good. So I'll just apply that, and you know, we might want to rename this material, and it doesn't seem to be rename. Maybe it's already on it. No, sorry, it already was on it, yeah. So we'll just call this oil tank, even though it's a chemical tank. Oil tank matte, just to kind of stay a little bit organized. It's a good habit to get into no matter what you're doing. So there's our material, and we're going to just sorry, I'll have to apply that. I want to apply that map now so you can drag it in. But first I'm gonna apply the normal map, just so we can see the normal map. You know, before you put any other textures on, you can just pop your normal map in to test it when you're doing tests. So make sure to fix this, because otherwise it won't recognize it as a normal map within the engine. So it's just warning you here, so it'll only come up for normal maps. So there it is there, preview, and now it's we haven't applied the material yet, so we'll just drag the material onto our object, and now our normal map is applied, and the light's a bit blown out at the moment, but we're going to fix that. So yeah, we're happy enough. We can see our normal map is working out. So we can move on and pop in the albedo map, and lastly we'll pop in the metallic map. So back to the material and just drag the metallic in to metallic, and you can play with the smoothness setting is gone. The normal map here as well, you can this is the strength of the normal map, so you can just you know, you can set that up, and obviously that's way too high, but just to give you an example, you can change it to whatever 2 or whatever suits your particular model. So you can see now, even with this simple setup, it's starting to look pretty good. We have dynamic kind of reflections here, but this isn't the GI being calculated yet. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm just going to grab this and make it bigger. And actually, before we set up the lighting, no, we'll set up the lighting and then I'll drop in the character controller. So another thing you can do is just come up to here and turn off the grid if it's annoying you. Right, so we can go over to lighting, and their directional light. If you select that, so we can go between the light and the lighting, and then we can just set our directional light here as the sun. And we might want to take off the ambient, or even drop it down, because it's blowing it out there way too much. And maybe if we want, we can also drop our ambient occlusion map into the occlusion slot here, and you mightn't see much of a difference there, but if we go back to lighting, so as I say, you can drop that up or down or put it wherever you like. And back to our light, select our light over here, and there's the colour of the light, like a kind of a warm sunshiny kind of colour. Light intensity, you can leave that at 1. I suppose it's, you know, unless whatever you're setting up nighttime scenes, but 1 is pretty good default for, you don't want to blow it out. And like I explained in the substance video, when you want to keep when you're working in this PBR setup here, you want to keep your ranges between, you know, in the 0 to 1 scale, 0.2 and 0.8, or just below and just above, so that colours, shadows aren't always seemingly existing because the colours are so dark, or light isn't blown out because you're already multiplying your high value by the light and it's just blowing it out. So just remember to bear that in mind. So back to the lighting here, it's pre-computed real time. We have the GI here set to real time rather than baked as it would have been before in older versions of Unity. And CPU usage here, we can set this to high, you know, if whatever 12 cores or something, and I'd advise it, you know, set this up so it doesn't take too long. So nothing, you can turn off baked GI, and at the moment now, you know, nothing's changing. So one important thing to do, remember we set the floor to static earlier on, we want to set this also to static, and as soon as we do that, you see down the corner it's updating here, and now the GI is on, and you can see here, I don't know if you can see in the video, but we have color bleed here and light bounce going on. So you can see the red from this is bleeding onto the floor here, color bleed, and it's also bouncing light, obviously because it's GI. So if I select this, and let's just I'll just create another material, and that'll be your floor. I'll drop it onto the floor, and I'll change the color to you know, a blue. And you can see now, even though that's not a light source, the global illumination, it's bouncing the light around the scene, and you know, the blue is bouncing up off the floor, and it's reflecting in this object here, in the metal of this object. So change it to maybe because the sky is blue, so I might get a better idea if I change it to green or even red. So that is pretty much the asset brought into Unity and looking, you know, looking decent enough. It's obviously, this is using the default skybox. So whereas in Painter, you know, we're using this which one is it? Panoramas on at the moment there. So if we were to use maybe some sort of outdoor one, well, there's red in that as well because it's a desert scene, but maybe not that one. But if we had a similar, just a blue sky kind of fading into the horizon, HDR in here, it would look they would look closer. The result would look more similar, but it, you know, it doesn't look bad. And plus, go up to the directional light and press E to rotate. We can see here we can rotate our light, and there's the sun in the skybox. This is like a procedural sort of a skybox, and it's, you know, it's going behind the horizon, and the horizon is blending and fading, changing colours to match that. And now it's gone all the way down. So then you can also rotate it this way. Moving it around isn't going to matter because it's an infinite directional light, so you want to be rotating it. So that's going to do the same kind of thing there. And that is basically it. Now there's a strange, see this, the way the shadows are behaving here. I think this is a problem at the moment in Unity. There doesn't seem to be a solution for it. I had a quick look around earlier on, and just people experiencing similar problems. So what I did was in the light there, this bias, like all these, I have all these settings. If you come up to edit and project settings and quality, by default it's going to be on fantastic, and these are all you know, high resolution, shadow distance, and all this stuff, hard and soft shadows. These are all set by default at very high, one of the highest kind of presets. See, these are on, you know, fantastic or whatever. So I'll go back to the light, and if we mess around with the this shadow bias here, is it this one? No, not that one. This one here, normal bias. If you bring it down, you can blend that out. But now we're getting the weird Moira patterns here in the ground. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. If anybody's more experienced in Unity that's watching this than me, which wouldn't be too hard, and you know what's going on here, although you probably wouldn't be watching this video if you did, you can feel free to drop a comment below and fill me in. Right, so with that done, I'm just going to come over here to standard assets, characters, first person controller, and prefabs, and this is the prefab that's already built, so we can just drag and drop into the scene, and you can see there's a camera already attached to it. So W to move, and we'll just move it sort of above the ground, and if we move it up here, yeah, it has all this stuff attached to it, so it has physics and everything. So rigid body, so it'll drop to the ground. So, you know, we could put it up here and just press play, and now we're in the game. You can see dropped, and now we're just using the controller's just using WASD controls as you normally would for, you know, first person. I'm sorry, the footsteps are a little bit loud. Spacebar to jump, and shift to run, but we'll probably run off the edge of the world. So I'll just get back out of that, and yeah, so that's basically the scene kind of set up. The last thing I want to do is come back here to our folder and the collider. So if we select our mesh, we're in the inspector, just come down to add component, physics 2D, and mesh collider is not there. Weird. Sorry. No. That's strange. I was there earlier on. I was looking for. Hang on a second. Right. So for whatever reason here, if I go to physics 2D, for whatever reason, mesh collider isn't showing up in the list. Even though when I checked this out earlier on, it wasn't. It was, sorry. So if I just type in mesh collider, search it, shows up. So just add it from there. And now our mesh we want to add is the collider. And from the list here, just select object 1, and that's our collider mesh. And now what I forgot to do was actually create a pipe here, but it's pretty much the same. I forgot to create this collider mesh for this part, but it's pretty much the same. You can just take the existing geometry and just delete, you know, just the topology to suit. So you're going to get rid of a lot of these edge loops. So select that again and drag a material on. Yeah, and that's we have our first person controller in, material are on, mesh colliders on. So we can I just want to make sure actually to put static on again, because see, I was noticing the light wasn't didn't look right, so it's just going to rebuild it. And yeah, now you can see it's rebuilt. So I'll press play again, and now you can see that, you know, we're colliding with it now. So before we were just walking through it, but obviously we don't have a collider here on the pipe, so we're just walking straight through that. So you can press spacebar and jump up onto it, and it jumps pretty high. So that is pretty much it. Our assets in place. Looks pretty close to Painter, and that's pretty much all you need. It's the complete workflow for getting your game assets into Unity, and not too much hassle. It's easy enough, straightforward enough. So yeah, that's all I wanted to show now at the Unity video. So as I say, yeah, you could just add in this, no problem, that extra bit of a collider. So I'm going to leave it at that, and hope everybody enjoyed the series, and it didn't kind of go on a bit long, but as usual I tried to cover things you know, as in depth as I can, and explain as much as I can based on me my knowledge of whatever we're talking about. So thanks again everybody for subscribing and giving me the thumbs up, and see you again, hopefully more tutorials to come soon. Alright then, cheers, thanks, good luck.